Good evening, everybody. Welcome into To The Point. We're doing well on this Wednesday, March the 6th. We have so much to dive into today. It's been a wild day in the NHL world. Just trades galore. I'm sure Sportsnet, TSN aren't thrilled that the trades are coming in on a Wednesday when you have a trade center special for 8 to 10 hours on Friday. But we're going to talk about all the stuff that happened today. We'll still have a trade deadline show on Friday afternoon where I react to everything that took place, where teams stand, all of that forthcoming on Friday. We have a miniature version of that right now, and there's also rumors that Jake Gensel should be traded before the day is over. At least that was according to Kyle Dubas last night. So we shall see if he lives up to that promise. But we have a lot to dive into. Not to mention, we're going to talk about some games last night, some things that's happened over the last little while. Also want to get into the NFL, franchise tags, players getting cut to free up salary. We'll get into that. Some baseball, injuries around the sport, including a big blow for the Boston Red Sox when it comes to starting pitchers. So that's all forthcoming here on the program. But we got to lead off with the Colorado Avalanche, who I expected to be active over the next few days. They are currently third in the Central Division. Their best player is tied for the league lead in points, Nathan MacKinnon. They have one of the best wingers in hockey in Mikko Rantanen. Multiple players on that team have won Stanley Cups. But like any team that wins a Stanley Cup, your team gets worse after you win because you're forced to do it because of the salary cap. And you looked at the Colorado Avalanche and you said, wow, that center ice position is pretty weak. I talked about it here, that they needed centermen more than even needed somebody in the back end, which I also thought they could use some help if everything went their way. Well, today, Joe Sakic got on the phone, made some calls, and did a lot. It started with Sean Walker, the pending unrestricted free agent defenseman of the Philadelphia Flyers, being traded to Colorado alongside a 2026 fifth rounder for Bowen Byram. Bowen Byram, a former fourth overall pick, a defenseman that does have a lot of promise, incredibly skilled, fast, can move the puck, but he gets overshadowed when you're on a team with Cale Makar, whose start to his career will rival anyone, and that includes Bobby Orr. Now, I got a few texts from friends, and I'm glad that I did because it helped me prepare to do this tonight, to really think about this trade, put it into perspective for everybody. And here's the conclusion that I came to with this. Seeing Middlestat come in, Sean Walker, Byram depart alongside Ryan Johansson and a 2025 first-round pick. The big thing here is Casey Middlestat is better than most people know, because Casey Middlestat's been playing in Buffalo, and the Buffalo Sabres have been a bad organization for a long time. They haven't made the playoffs since 2010. They will miss the playoffs again this year for the 14th straight year. They have loads of young talent like Owen Power, Rasmus Dahlin, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, Devin Levi, just to name a few. But they're a team nobody really watches. They will be talked about tonight because they're playing the Toronto Maple Leafs. But on the average night, Buffalo is just another team. And when you're just another team, not in a major market, and you're not winning, nobody cares about you. But Casey Middlestat, the American, has been a good NHL player for some time now. He's 25. He's a pending restricted free agent. But he's played every game this season. He has 47 points. Only 14 goals, but to put that into perspective, he had 15 all of last year. 59 points last year. He will likely eclipse that career high this year playing in Colorado. He forechecks hard. He's smart, strong on pucks. Is he a number one? You could argue, is he not a number two centerman? I think he's better than what they had. He's a younger player Buffalo is willing to part with. Buffalo gets Bowen Byram, who has another year in his contract, is 3 years younger than Casey Middlestat, and you add Bowen Byram to a defense pairing with Owen Power, Matthias Samuelsson, signed long-term, and the crown jewel, Rasmus Dahlin. So going into next season, you have 4 defensemen under contract. That's your top 4, and you work from there. That's a good building block to have. His production slipped. He's been a bit injury prone. He's not the biggest kid in the world, and I think that's something Colorado, and I'll touch on that Colorado wanted to address. But Casey Middlestat's a hard player to play against. He works hard. He's willing to get in the grunt areas. And while he might not score the ultimate game winner, he might find a way to have an impact on the play. I think if Middlestat playing with Arturi Luukkonen, I think that would be a fun fit for Colorado. Both guys have that same identity of work ethic, and that would be intriguing. You still have Drouin, who is starting to play better. Parise. It's not a perfect team by any means, the Colorado Avalanche, but are they better? I think so. And I like Middlestat. He's big, he's heavy, and you get rid of Ryan Johansson in this process, who goes to Philly. Johansson had another year at $4 million after this one. And Ryan Johansson's not been worth the money. Nashville moved him out, and they've been better for it. Duchesne's been a reclamation project that's worked in Dallas. Johansson has not worked in Colorado. His work ethic has always been suspect. He's never been the hardest worker. He's never been a guy to really go into the corners, make things happen. He's slow. There's a lot of things against him. And then after acquiring him, Philadelphia placed Johansson on waivers. So they don't want him in the long term. He might be playing in the American League for some time, because I don't see another team trading for him. But they get Middlestat from Buffalo. They get Walker from Philly, who's a pending UFA, who Philly tried to re-sign, but they elected to re-sign Nick Seeler, who they did for 4 years, $2.7 million per season. Sean Walker's not a game breaker. But as we've talked about, deadline moves 9 times out of 10 are not game breakers. They are pieces of the puzzle. Sean Walker's 29 years old. He'll be 30 in November. You look at him, 22 points in 63 games, 34 penalty minutes, and for my parents out there who still love this statistic, he's a +9 on the season. He's a bottom-end defenseman, but I think he's a better bottom-end defenseman than a lot of teams have. I'll put it that way. Looking at daily face-off, their line pairings right now, Devon Taves, Cale Makar, Josh Manson, Sammy Girard, and I think they'll go Jack Johnson and Sean Walker. That's better than what they had. That's better than Caleb Jones, for instance. Having to play him. Having him come in, add to the team. He can move the puck. They love Jack Johnson in Colorado. He's been there a long time. They trust him. You have, and I made this point earlier, texting, my inner circle. I don't want a small defense. And I think Colorado is an organization, and most organizations are smart enough to figure this. They're not winning a participation trophy, and maybe they'll give you a ham sandwich on the way out with a small defense. You are going to get run out of the building. You can parse things. You could say you don't need an elite goalie. Vegas proved that. Okay, I'll buy into that. You don't need elite players. Okay, I'll buy into that. Vegas, some of those Pittsburgh, other than Crosby, they were okay, but they didn't have elite talent. Carl Hagelin was playing a big role. Phil Kessel was a Conn Smythe winner, even though the NHL was too stupid not to give it to him or too afraid to not give it to Crosby. Either or, they weren't loaded with superstars. Seeing, the St. Louis Blues of 2019, not exactly a superstar team. They had good players, but they were built a certain way. So you can parse those things out. You can say it's not a necessary thing to have that on a championship level team. Okay, I'm with you. I'm on the boat. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm in. But to me, non-negotiable, you need a big defense. You need a defense that can withstand 4 rounds of a potential 7 games. That's 28 playoff games. And if you got a bunch of 5'8" defensemen weighing in at $170, you don't got a hope in hell. And now, for Colorado, you have one guy who's a liability, and that's Sammy Girard. And I'll tell you right now, if they could trade Sammy Girard, they would have traded him today for Middlestat, but that's not happening. For multiple reasons. And Walker's only 5'11", but 5'11's better than, let's see what they say about Sammy Girard, because whatever it is, it'll probably be a lie. I'm not trying to be hard on him. It's just the truth. Sammy Girard he's not 5'10", but they list him at 5'10". He's not 5'10". You watch a hockey game, he might be 5'10" on skates, but I don't even think he is. I think he's 5'9", 5'8" on skates. He's small. You need bigger players. And the year Colorado won the Stanley Cup, Sammy Girard was out because he got injured in the playoffs, broke his sternum. They would have traded him today because he's 25. He's young, same age as Middlestat. He'll be 26 in May. They're in the same draft class, but he's been in the player assistance program. He has some warts on him, and you probably won't hear this from media people. Don't care. It's just the truth. He's got 4 less points than Bowen Byram. But Byram's the younger prospect. He's got more intrigue to him. He doesn't have the warts, so to speak, that Girard does yet. So I don't think Colorado, even if they wanted to, could flip him at this deadline for another defenseman that they view as a better option. But as the hours go by with seeing Sean Walker get dealt, seeing Nick Seeler get re-signed, the great defensemen that are available are few and far between. Hanifin remains, but that's a trickier deal. That's going to require a lot of maneuvering. It's going to require a big package. You're going to have cap room, maybe a third team. Who knows? But I'm looking at this deal, and I think it's a 3-way trade that I'm okay with on all 3 fronts. Philly, you take on Johansson, but you get a first-round pick in the trade. Great. I've been saying all along, Philly, yes, they're in a tough spot because they might make the playoffs, even though they don't want to. And if they might say they want to, but they don't. They don't want it. They want to be rebuilding, and they should be rebuilding. And they get a first rounder. You trade Sean Walker. because you're not going to re-sign him and Sealer. So you flip him, you take on Johansson, which you can because you're going to have cap room, so it doesn't really matter. But you get a first-round pick in the deal. Happy with that. Good deal. Buffalo gets Bowen Byram. As I said, you have your top four going into next season. You have those, they're building blocks. What you do outside of that, you want to change the head coach. You want to get some more forwards that have some experience that can produce and actually try to push to make the playoffs. That's on the GM. That's on Kevin Adams to do that heavy lifting. But I'm good with that. Middlestat was a center you're willing to part with, and you get a defenseman that probably has more upside than Middlestat to replace him. And you got Cousins locked up long-term. You have Tage Lemieux locked up long-term. You have guys up front that are going to be on the Sabres for a long time. Middlestat, pending RFA, you probably can't pay him. See ya. Thanks for coming. And so I like that for Buffalo. And then for Colorado, you get your center, you get a depth defenseman to help your team, and you're still in a position to compete. No team is perfect. Do I like Colorado? Even after the trades today, as much as I like the Dallas Stars, I do not. To me, Dallas is just a scary-ass team. I like Jake Ottinger. Logan Stankoven had 4 points last night. He's played 6 NHL games. He's got 8 points. Wyatt Johnson is only a year older than Logan Stankoven. The kid is an absolute stud. And kudos to my mother for watching him play a couple weeks ago and text me about him. She knows her stuff. So that's what you get to see good players when you flip off the Leaf game. You actually see great players around the league. But she learned, proud of her, love her. And Wyatt Johnson, Stankoven, Duchesne, who's tearing it up, Heiskanen, they got a team in Dallas. Does this give Colorado a better chance? Yes. The center they'd love to have is Sidney Crosby. We all know it. What happened today doesn't eliminate the chances of him going there this summer. Likely would have to happen before the draft. I think it's highly unlikely because Crosby has to agree to it. He has to okay it. But you still have your 2024 first that you could move in that deal, that you could use some pieces to bring in Sidney Crosby. So the option is still on the table for Colorado to be that aggressive. It's unfortunate it can't be for this playoff run because that would be optimal, but that's the cards aren't on the table right now. So oftentimes you see a winner, you see a loser. What I like about this trade is there's pieces going everywhere that you can tangibly look at. Buffalo gets a defenseman. Colorado gets a center. We can track that for years to come, see how it goes. Call it Philly, less so because Johansson was already on waivers, but you get a first rounder that could potentially be an intriguing prospect as they push towards Philly. Optimally, would like to be elite 3 years from now. 2027, entering the 2027-2028 season, that's when they'd like to be great because they have this kid playing in Russia who's great, who's passed Kaprizov for the most points by a Russian teenager in KHL history. I am sold beyond belief on this guy. Their first rounder last year, he's legit, Matvei Michkov. I love him. He's signed for another 3 years in Russia. That's okay. So is Kaprizov. He's been pretty good since he came to North America. But that's ultimately when they want to be great. For Danny Briere, for Keith Jones, what they're doing. They might make the playoffs this year. But that rebuild is going to continue because they don't have the roster to have sustained success. Even in that shit Metropolitan Division. But that's the first deal. I hope that made sense. And I like it for all three sides. And I don't think the fact that it was Byram from Middlestad straight up is crazy. If you really look at production, you really look at what Colorado needed and what Byram was going to give them, it is not cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs deal. It's very fair. It makes a lot of sense. Both teams fill a need, and that's what you want. You want to leave a business transaction feeling like you won. And I think both sides can feel that way tonight. Next, let's go to Edmonton. Edmonton Oilers played a defensive-minded game last night against the Boston Bruins. Both sides wanted to give up nothing, which really they did. But Edmonton ties the game late by Draisaitl. McDavid finds Draisaitl in overtime. He scores the game winner. Edmonton escapes the TD Garden with 2 points. But Boston defended so well. I thought Edmonton defended extremely well in that game. Neither team wanted to really open it up. But the Oilers get 2 points. I like the Oilers team. Like most teams, you can improve your back end. I also felt they needed to improve their bottom six. So today, they did some business with a divisional foe. But a divisional foe who don't really have any aspirations, a bad team, in transition. So Edmonton acquired Adam Henrique, longtime member of the Ducks, great teammate, leadership role in Edmonton, alongside Sam Carrick, kind of a fourth-line player, depth piece, for a 2024 first-rounder, a conditional 2025 fifth if the Oilers win the Cup, and also Anaheim retained 50% of Henrique and Carrick's deal. Tampa was also a third team included to hold some salary to make this deal happen. And they got a fourth in 2026. Henrique might have been the best center available. And that might sound crazy, but it's true. Gensel's not a center. As other players go, well, maybe he might be traded. Maybe he might move. But for the trade bait list, this kind of Henrique was the name. Plays hard on both ends. Good at face-offs. Has a lot of playoff experiences way back when, was with the New Jersey Devils when they made a cup run in 2012. And that's when he was a young player. But he's been in playoff wars. He knows what it's like. Has an opportunity to be on a competitive team after being in Anaheim for so long. I like Adam Henrique. Look at the Oilers team. Draisaitl, McDavid, Hyman, Nuge, Evander Kane, Janmark, Ryan McLeod, Corey Perry, Warren Foegele, Holloway, Derek Ryan, Connor Brown. Connor Brown doesn't have a goal on the season. It's a tad problematic. I like McLeod. He skates fast. Corey Perry, the worm, he's going to do his thing. I think they'll have to decide. I think Henrique's going to take some draws. I think they'll want him to play center, but maybe he'll play the wing with Ryan McLeod, which will be fine. Me personally, I'm putting Corey Perry with Nugent Hopkins and Kane. And these things can change because I don't think they want Draisaitl and McDavid together the rest of the year. But just bear with me. You go Foegele, McLeod, Henrique. Heavy, fast, tough line. And then you have Holloway, Derek Ryan, and either Sam Carrick or Connor Brown. Or they have other options that they cycle through in the American League. Sam Gagner was put on waivers. I think Sam Gagner is as good a player currently as Connor Brown and what he can produce. So they have options. But Henrique makes their team better. Sam Carrick provides some more depth in their bottom six. They do have to give up their 2024 first, which is not optimal. But that's the price of doing business. With Anaheim retaining 50%, acquiring 2 players, the only other piece of the deal is a conditional pick, and that's if you win. So it's a one-piece deal. I understand why they decided to do it. Henrique is a good player. They're both pending UFAs. This is purely a rental thing. But he's got 42 points in 62 games. That's good stuff for playing 17 minutes a night, 53% on draws. I like Henrique. Not a game changer, but he helps your team. And that's Edmonton, Colorado, Toronto if they make moves. You're not acquiring a piece that's going to shock you because you have your players that are great. McDavid and Draisaitl, Zach Hyman's got 43 goals. I mean, Evan Bouchard's one of the best power play defensemen in the league. Matthias Ekholm. You're not getting anybody that's gonna shock you. That's gonna surpass the players that you have. Henrique's 34. So you make your bottom 6 more veteran, more experience. Henrique's never won a cup, so you're hungry to win. You're back in a competitive environment. Sounds like both these players will make their debuts tomorrow night in Columbus. So that's great. I like the Oilers doing this with Anaheim retaining salary, with Tampa taking some on. Oilers, and Ken Holland said this, we keep our flexibility to go try and get a veteran defenseman, which they need. That's something I think they need to address. They're not going to get anybody huge. Hannafin's not going to Edmonton. But you look at Ekholm, Bouchard, love it. Desharnais is improved. Watching Edmonton last night, I love Desharnais. He's really improved. He's skating better, big. He can move for that size of man. Nurse, who people don't like. I like Darnell Nurse more than the average Joe. But again, my opinion rivals all, so who cares? Cody Ceci and Kulak. It might just be a player that comes in and is a 7th guy. Because I don't think they want to rock the boat with who they acquire. Would I look at somebody other than Brett Kulak to play night in, night out? Absolutely. Absolutely, because I don't think he's that good. But that's me. I think he makes a lot of mistakes. He's not good in his own zone. And yes, I see Casey. Yeah, Dirk is here. If you're not watching, Dirk is here for the podcast tonight. She's pretty tired. A lot of trades today. A lot of stuff that she's got to track herself. I mean, other than the squirrels in the rain, but she's hanging in there. She's having a good time. Happy to be here with all of you. But Edmonton improved. I'd like to see them get another defenseman. And I'm going to pull up the trade bait list because I just like to see the names because sometimes I forget, honestly. Let's see. Henrique off the board. Chychrun in Ottawa. I don't see that as a fit in Edmonton. Who knows? Matt Dumba. That could be a fit in Edmonton. $3.9 million. Arizona can retain salary. 50%. They could bring him in. Not a whole lot of defense. Joel Edmondson. He doesn't make a whole lot of money in Montreal, pending UFA. I like him. I think that should be a good trade for Savard. He's got another year. I don't see that happening in Edmonton. So there's names, but there isn't a whole lot of guys with these depth defensemen. But honestly, looking through the list, Joel Edmondson to Edmonton would make some sense. I think he'd be a fit. He's on your bottom pair. He's either playing or Brett Kulak's playing. You can make that decision as we get closer to the postseason. He's played in the playoffs before. So I think, and Ken Holland said this, he's going to try to get a veteran defenseman. I think they will before Friday afternoon. But I like the work Edmonton did today. Their team is better. Yes, they give up a first-round pick, but that's the price of doing business. Other than Jake Gensel or Noah Hannafin, I don't think there's anybody that you go, oh, I'm going to trade a first-rounder for this guy. You will if they're keeping salary and they're doing a lot to help you, which Anaheim did. And clearly Edmonton was okay with that type of trade. So, good piece of business for Ken Holland to get this done. And I don't think he's done yet on the trade front. I think more things will happen here. For Anaheim, you get a first-round pick. You trade away 2 pending UFAs, which is the job of a GM on a bad team. You keep salary, who cares? Frank Vatrano's got 1 year left on a deal at $3.65. He's had a good season. Gonna have 30 goals, 48 points. I think he's a good ad for teams. He played well when he got traded to New York a couple of years ago. That's what got him this deal. I think he'll be picked up before the deadline is over. Next deal. Florida. Florida's got 90 points. They're currently leading the race for the President's Trophy. They're the best team in the league, as somebody's been saying for about a month and a half. Might be me. They're a complete wagon, and they didn't make a move last year. They didn't trade for anybody. They had a quiet trade deadline. They kept the team they had. They went into the playoffs as underdogs. They upset Boston. They upset Toronto. They upset Carolina. They ultimately lose to a superior Vegas team. This year, Reinhardt's got 45 goals. Barkov's making passes from his stomach. Kachuk's heating up. I mean, Verhaeghe's a stud. Bobrovsky, so everything's going well. They've won 15 of their last 17 games in South Florida. They made a move today to improve their team. They acquired Vladimir Tarasenko from the Ottawa Senators for a conditional 4th-round pick in the 2024 draft and a third-round selection in 2025. The conditional pick will become a 2026 third-rounder if the Panthers win the Stanley Cup, and Ottawa is retaining 50% of the forward's $5 million cap hit. First thing I saw on Twitter was, why was the return so minimal? The reason for that is because Vladimir Tarasenko, stupid Ottawa, had a full no move. And I've been preaching this to you guys, my choir, for a long time. Giving bit pieces, and this is just going to make it over the top, giving Russian bit pieces a no trade clause or a no move clause is just beyond stupidity, and you deserve what comes your way. You might say, oh no, that's not fair, just to loop in Russians to make that sound. Hey, facts of life. Where do Russians normally like to play? Well, they normally like to play in Florida. That's where Pavel Bure went after he left Vancouver, I think, right? And they normally like to live in New York. Panarin hated Columbus. Bobrovsky, can I go to Florida? Kucherov, he's in Tampa. I mean, the list goes on and on. Nikolai Habibulin, where did he win his Stanley Cup? Oh, yeah, Tampa, Florida. So Tarasenko only wanted to go to the Sunshine State. And I don't blame him because that's the only workplace I want to go. But he wanted to go to Florida. So Ottawa saying, pending UFA, we don't want you. You aren't helping us. Our team sucks. So we need to get rid of you. You are number, let's see. Where is he on this trade bait list? He must be somewhere on this. You're number 7 on the trade bait list. You got 41 points in 57 games, 32. It's time for you to go. But you only get a conditional 3rd and a 4th the next year because they know that they have you lock, stock, and barrel. They don't have to give you a 1st or give you a 2nd because Tarasenko will remain in Ottawa unless you can make the deal. Because you say, hey, we got to move for you. You're going to Washington to pair with Ovechkin. I don't want to go to Washington. No thanks. Blocked. Tarasenko, his agent, I think he's a Milstein client, told the Senators, we're going to Florida or we're going to Tampa Bay. One or the other. So knowing that information, they said, okay, I guess we have to do what they want. We'll send Tarasenko to Florida and we'll deal with the consequences. That's just the way it worked here. I'm not the biggest Tarasenko fan. I've been over this many times. I think, yes, he's a Stanley Cup champion. I can't take that away from him. He can score goals. He will not be asked to be a hero on this team. You look at what they get. Verhaeghe, Barkov, Sam Reinhart, Bennett, Kachuk, Tarasenko, Rodriguez, Anton Lundell, Luosterainen, Nick Cousins, Kevin Stanlin, and Ryan Lomberg. Good fit. He'll probably play second line, potentially third line right wing. I love their team, as I've been through. Forsling, Ekblad, Mikkola, Montour, Kulikov, Ekman-Larsson. A big defense, a good goaltender, a bottom 6 that knows their role, that are difficult to play against. So, while Tarasenko's not my favorite player, they don't have to give up much for him. They get to say we made a move, we made a trade, despite the fact that we don't lose ever. And we've improved our team going into the postseason. So, good piece of business for Ottawa. Steve Staios, not really your fault. This is Dorian's fault, giving him a no move to a player that didn't deserve one. Never played for your organization. He signed the damn contract in mid-July because he couldn't get a deal. He was a late signing, Vladimir Tarasenko, and you give him a no move. Oh, my God. Can't fix stupid, and the Ottawa Senators have majored in that for a couple decades. Their rink location sucks. Their team building sucks. Their playoff hopes stink. They just major in stupidity. So let's add on to the Tarasenko deal part of that. Way to go. This was the first trade. This was last night. Started off the Bonanza. The Vegas Golden Knights acquired Anthony Mantha from the Washington Capitals for a 2024 second, a 2026 fourth, and Washington retained 50% of Mantha's contract. I like this move for Vegas. The big fish is Gensel. And somebody's going to get Gensel. We know that. I don't know if it's going to be Vegas anymore. Although they did retain salary, so it doesn't push them out. But Anthony Mantha, pending UFA, 29. He's quietly got 20 goals on one of the oldest, most boring teams in the NHL. And he's still 6'5". He's still 240. He can move around a little bit. And he brings some more size to an already big team. I like that. Detroit traded him to Washington. They couldn't wait to get rid of him. After that deal, if you look at it, 2020, 2021, 9 goals in 37 games. Not great. 11 goals, 2022, 2023. Gets 20 this year. Playing for a new contract, you could say. Vegas is not going to re-sign him. No chance, right? So they just need him to be good for a while. If he's good in the playoffs, that behooves him and it behooves Vegas because they are going to win. Anthony Mantha can take shifts off. He absolutely can be a lazy player at times. But for what they're building in Vegas, the team that they have, the infrastructure around him, I like him. I like the deal. I think it's fun. Adds to that team a big winger that can shoot the puck. Makes them just that much more threatening for me. Eichel, Marchessault, Barbashev, Carlson, Stevenson, Amadio, you look Nick Waugh, Mantha. Once they get Mark Stone back into the swing of things, Martinez, Pietrangelo, Theodore, McNabb, Haig, Whitecloud, they still have that defense. They are struggling right now, Vegas, no doubt about it. The Los Angeles Kings, I believe, passed them last night in the Pacific Division. Vegas is currently a wildcard team. Tied in points with Los Angeles, but they played one more game than the Kings. So they're in a dogfight. They might be a wildcard team. They have 20 games left on the season. Health is not on their side. They've been through a lot. Goalie injuries all year. Mark Stone, half their defense have missed half the games. But if they can get healthy at the right time, potentially, and this is a potential thing, get the Winnipeg Jets in the first round of the playoffs. That seems almost unfair to Winnipeg to have to play Vegas, who they played in the first round last year. But I'd be favoring Vegas in that series. I'd look around and go, shit, Winnipeg gets first in their division. Even Vancouver, to get Vegas in a first round is a very tough ask. You're praying for the Predators at that point. You want Nashville badly instead of drawing Vegas. They may still get third place. They may still play the Oilers. Or potentially, the Oilers still have an outside chance of getting first to the Pacific. They have 4 games in hand on the Canucks, and they trail them by 9 points. So they're not done yet by any means. But Mantha comes in, helps your team. I like the deal. Big winger. Gensel, still an option for Vegas if they can pull it off. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But you do something anyway. You get a player that you like, even if you can't pull off the Gensel deal. Also, the New York Rangers acquired forward Alex Wenberg from the Seattle Kraken for draft picks. Seattle gets a second in 2024 and a fourth in 2025. Kraken will retain 50% of Wenberg's cap at Wenberg 29 is in the final year of a 3-year deal, $4.5 million per season. He's got 9 goals in 60 games this season. He's a third, fourth line center, is what he is. He's a name that was on the board that I go, I don't really, I don't really want him. I look at Seattle and go, I'd take Adam Larson, Will Borgen, Jared McCann, Shore, Jamie Alexiak. But looking at their depth chart, he'll slot in as their third line center. Still a good team. They're top. You look at the top 6: Lafreniere, Trocheck, Panarin, Kreider, Sabinajad, Kako. I like that. They needed help in their bottom 6. I don't know if they did a whole lot to help their bottom 6. But Lindgren, Fox, Trouba, Keandre Miller, Braden Schneider, Shesterkin. They still have a very good team playing at the Garden. Wenberg's fine. Doesn't change your life. To me, he's okay. He's just a piece. Again, you have to give up a second rounder. Because they're keeping salary, price of doing business. But I don't know, in this situation, that's the business I would have done for giving up a second round pick. But it helps you win the Stanley Cup, helps you win a Stanley Cup. But he's just not an impact player, to me. Might end up being important, but I don't see it right now. Those were the deals today. A lot of teams involved, a lot of players off the board. You still have Chychrun, whose rumors are starting to swirl more and more as the deadline approaches. Noah Hannafin. Intriguing because Saturday, Elliot Friedman reported on headlines that Hannafin's choice would be to go to the Tampa Bay Lightning. And Calgary plays Tampa Bay tomorrow night. So my spidey sense is going off saying, I wonder if they make that deal after the game's over. I wonder if Hannafin becomes a member of the Tampa Bay Lightning after the game is finished. I guess it doesn't really matter to Calgary. You're going to miss the playoffs, but it wouldn't surprise me if they do that. Maybe. Maybe he doesn't want his first game to be against his former teammates. That's always a weird scenario. But if Hannafin does get dealt to Tampa, he won't have to go far because that's where they're playing tomorrow night at Amalie Arena. I mean, Nick Seeler, Sean Walker, both off the board because Seeler signed an extension and then was put on injured reserve the same day. So he's not available. The Leafs don't do anything, which isn't a huge surprise because I don't think they're going to do much. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. If there's not something, if there's pieces out there and they're not worth the price that people want you to pay for it, then you're not going to pay for it. Simple as that. I don't know. But lots of intriguing moves, that's for sure. I think the Gensel to Vancouver thing is intriguing because the way it's reported, Gensel would go to Vancouver. Then Vancouver would flip Elias Lindholm, who they traded for just a few weeks ago, to Boston because they don't love how he's played since arriving. Which, it's true, he hasn't been great. And Gensel would be better for that team. Boston does need a centerman, and Lindholm would help. And I've been saying that all year. I thought that would be the place he ended up. That's a lot of things that got to come together that have to work for that trade to be finalized. Carolina reportedly in the mix for Gensel as well. And Carolina reportedly was in on Pettersson, so now they're in on Gensel. So they are looking for a big name player, which they never are. And I'm not buying into Carolina pulling that off until they do it. It's always something, oh, we're in on this guy, we're in on this, and it never happens, and you end up getting nobody, and you lose in the second round because you don't have enough. Interesting. That's for sure. Trade deadline Friday at 4 o'clock. We'll be locked and loaded on it. Past couple nights, you're looking. I thought Boston played two really good games against, in Toronto, back to back. You have to fly back, play Edmonton the next night. The fact that you get 3 out of 4 points, those two opponents, is phenomenal. They defended incredibly well. They allowed 3 goals in 2 games. They deserved a better fate last night, but you go to 3-on-3 with a faster, younger team, you're probably not going to win. I think that game goes to overtime in a playoff scenario. Boston wins. But that's the way the cookie crumbles. But it was impressive for them to have a couple games where they defended well. They show what they can do. Pasternak was phenomenal in both games, which he is most nights. I mean, he's got 90 points on the season. He's no slouch. But as Edmonton's been playing phenomenal as of late. McDavid's really found his stride, taken off, playing like the best player in the world, like he is. Draisaitl finding his game. Credit to Evan Bouchard after his start. The way he's been playing. Stu Skinner has been rock solid all year long. And the way it's sounding, I don't think it's going to be a big goalie market. Heard that forever. New Jersey still in the mix. Tom Fitzgerald, Mr. No Balls. Tom Fitzgerald saying, yeah, we're going to be in on the goalie market, and we're not trading pending UFA Tyler Toffoli. And I think Tyler Toffoli would have some interest on the market because he's a multiple-time Stanley Cup champion. He's been to 3 Stanley Cup finals, and he's just a winner. But reportedly, they're not shopping him. New Jersey dropped another game to Florida last night, so they're stuck in this weird middle. Pittsburgh wins a game, but I think they've kind of decided we're not very good. We're trading pieces. Gensel's going to go. Jets lose to the Kraken. Kraken hang tough, man. Don't quit. Back-to-back nights, you win in Calgary. Fly to Winnipeg, win there. They're with St. Louis, who also has won 2 in a row. Oh, no, they lost last night, pardon me. St. Louis was winning, and then Islanders came back and won late. 67 points, 20 games to go. Trail Nashville by 6 points. So highly unlikely they get in, but they're not quitting yet. But yeah, that's kind of where we stand. A lot of moves done today. Could still see another move done tonight with Jake Gensel. So, lots to react to, lots to see here. Don't know how busy Trade Center will be on Friday with all these moves happening now. And David Pagnotta, he's a editor-in-chief of the Fourth Period, host and analyst here at XM NHL. Toronto has recently checked back on Joel Edmondson of the Capitals as they continue to navigate the D market. Yeah, I think Edmondson, the intrigue on him is only going to continue to skyrocket because he is a good player. And yes, he's a bottom pair defenseman, but he can play that role well. And he knows his role. He's been on teams doing that for a long time. I like that. Joel Edmondson to Toronto would make some sense, but they would add another fifth or sixth defenseman, and they have a team full of them. So again, maybe that won't happen. But tonight in the NHL, Buffalo in Toronto, Samsonov against Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. Detroit in Colorado. Colorado obviously moving out in a number of pieces, so there'll be call-ups getting in place tonight to play games. And then Ottawa in Anaheim. So 3 games on the NHL schedule. Full slate tomorrow. But 3 games as we get closer to the deadline tonight. Let's move to baseball. Scott Boras talked on Monday during the Matt Chapman press conference that there are injuries throughout baseball to pitchers. The pitching market's heating up because injuries are everywhere. And I kind of debunked that. I talked about how teams are set with their guys. It's going to take a team to have a real major injury or get desperate to give money to Blake Snell or Jordan Montgomery and kind of wilt to that pressure. Well, Justin Verlander is injured. He's going to start the season uninjured list and be out for a period of time with the Houston Astros. You might think, okay, here's an opening for these guys to get a deal. No. I don't think so. Houston's a smart organization. They have guys all the time that come out of nowhere, pitch really well, and then all of a sudden they're pitching there for 5-6 years, and they leave in free agency where a team overpays them. Framber Valdez was an unknown until he got starts, and he's been really good for Houston ever since. I look at Houston and go, Verlander's 40 years old. If you expected him to pitch the entire season without going on the IL, you're drunk. He's pitched the most innings in baseball over the last 20 years. Won World Series, done it all. Horrible season with the Mets. Got to the ALCS last year, losing to Texas. But Verlander can still pitch. He is Mr. Houston. They will have guys step up in his absence. So I don't think the injury to Justin Verlander helps the clients of Scott Boras one bit. Then there's this injury. Lucas Giolito, pitcher with the Boston Red Sox, pitched with the White Sox for a long time. At times was a complete machine. At times was a complete gas can. Red Sox take a chance on him. He's 29, will be 30 in July. They give him a 2-year deal. Career, he's got a 4.43 ERA. He had a 4.88 ERA with 8 wins, 15 losses last year, so not very good. He's got a torn UCL, which basically means he might need TJ, and he's done before the season even starts for the Red Sox. The Red Sox, who are projected by everyone to finish dead last in the American League East, the Red Sox, who have traded Mookie Betts and let players walk. Verdugo leaves for the Yankees. Devers remains on a big contract, but he's pissed off that he's got nobody else that's any good to play with. Alex Cora doesn't have a contract extension. He could be gone after this season. Those are the Red Sox. Losing a pitcher. Now, you might think that Fenway Sports Group and Theo Epstein, who's now back on board, are saying, hey, Giolito's gone. We need another pitcher. This fan base is pissed off enough. We're not spending. We're not going to be any good. We should worry about the future here. That's not going to happen. Not going to happen. Giolito is gone. Doesn't change the fact that the Red Sox are still going to lose a lot of games. Doesn't change the fact that other teams might look around and go, we could use one of those pitchers, including the Cy Young winner. Cardinals, another injury. Sonny Gray has mild hamstring strain. Could miss opening day. Was the projected opening day starter. Might miss opening day. That's not a big deal. That's not a big deal because it's one start. You start 4 days later. You're not that banged up. So there are injuries. Bumps and bruises. Alek Manoah. Gas can in Toronto. Gosman not throwing. If the Blue Jays suffered an injury where Gosman had Tommy John, then maybe the Blue Jays get desperate and they have to do something. But they have their set budget that they're willing to spend, and every team does. And some teams are bigger than others, like the Dodgers, like the Yankees, who will spend more. But most of these teams look around and go, we spent what we're willing to spend. If there's any team that's going to wilt for a team that I don't think is very good, but they do something, the Giants come to mind. Jorge Soler was signed a couple weeks ago. He was a free agent. They needed a bat. Then they decided to go get Matt Chapman. A couple weeks later, obviously signed him on Saturday. Do I think the Giants are good enough to compete for the NL West crown? I do not. They might be better than the Padres this year, but I'm still not sure. I don't think the Padres are great. Rockies stink, per usual. And Arizona should be pretty good after getting to the World Series last year. But San Francisco has been Mr. second place for a long time. Second place in that division. Second place in getting Aaron Judge or Shohei Ohtani or you name a player. They have to say we're going to bring back Pablo Sandoval. That's who we have to put out publicity of him coming back to this team. He's on a minor league deal, by the way, if you didn't know, the Big Panda, back in the Bay Area. I think that Snell, Montgomery are going to have to accept deals that they don't like. Maybe Montgomery goes back to Texas. Blake Snell, I have no idea. I always thought the Yankees might get him. Because they'd be a team that they see a bad spring training from a guy like Carlos Rodon and go, you know what, we're going to go sign Blake Snell. And probably overpay him because Scott Boras will find a way to do it to us. Time after time after time. Maybe they don't want to deal with Scott Boras anymore because guess what? They have Juan Soto on their team now. And Juan Soto, will not negotiate in season. He will not negotiate in season. Of course he won't. He needs to hit the market. He needs to break the bank for Scott Boras. It's all a game here. He turned down $400 million from the Washington Nationals. Turned down a big check from the Padres. Juan Soto already on the third team in his career. Is he 26 yet? He'll be 26 in October. He'll be 26 this season when the season's over. When the Yankees are not playing in the World Series. Oop, did I say that? There are pitching injuries. So, yes, Scott Boras is right to an extent. But that's not going to change the reality of the situation for these pitchers. They're not getting big deals because I don't think teams are stupid enough to fold right now when they hold all the cards. Let's move to the NFL. Yesterday was franchise tag day. Teams have to make a decision if they want to franchise a player. And when you franchise a player, there's a designated salary that goes to this player, and you have the rights to negotiate with them until July on a long-term extension. If the two sides cannot come to a long-term extension, the player will play out the season on the franchise tag. Like Josh Jacobs, like Saquon Barkley did last year for the respective teams. Now, both those running backs were not franchise tagged this year. They will be free agents Monday afternoon. They will be available to teams around the league, and the running back market will be one of the most fascinating things to watch when we get to free agency. There were a number of players who were franchise tagged, although. Brian Burns, one of the best pass rushers in the NFL, a complete menace, franchise tagged by the Carolina Panthers. According to Adam Schefter and others, Carolina is still looking to try to trade him. Should be many suitors around the league. So they're franchising him so that the next team can sign a long-term deal. They can have control and get a return for, Brian Burns. Jaguars franchise tag Josh Allen. Not the quarterback. This is the pass rusher, number 41 for the Jaguars. He's a menace. Had the third most quarterback pressures in the NFL last year. He plays alongside Trayvon Walker, who they took first overall. Josh Allen was a fourth overall pick. He will make around $24 million this year on the franchise tag. He's a great player. He's their best pass rusher. He's the best player on that Jacksonville defense. And makes all the sense in the world. He would have been highly coveted if he was free. He is not. They now have time until July to try to figure something out, but teams will not have a crack at him come Monday. Indianapolis Colts franchise tag Michael Pittman Jr., who's really been their best receiver for some time. It's a position they've never really addressed. It's been Michael Pittman Jr. and a bunch of guys. 26, had 109 receptions last year, 1,100 yards, 4 touchdowns. He's a guy in third down, makes big catches, the go-to guy. Anthony Richardson needs a good target when he comes back next season. Colts, keep Pittman, makes some sense. Baltimore Ravens, they had some tough calls. Are you going to franchise tag Patrick Queen, who's a great linebacker, who they'll likely lose in free agency, or Justin Madubuike, who led the NFL in pressures last year? They decided to keep Justin Madubuike. Huge season, was the anchor really of that defense, made everything happen. He stays in Baltimore, keeps their team competitive. They need to try to keep Patrick Queen. They need to find some tailbacks in either the draft or free agency. Saquon Barkley would be a lot of fun in Baltimore, but they keep Madubuike, which was top priority. So good for them. The Bears franchise tag Jalen Johnson, their corner, so he stays in Chicago. The Bucs tag Antoine Winfield Jr., who had 6 forced fumbles, which led the NFL last year. He had 6 sacks, 3 interceptions. He just does everything. He's a jack of all trades. But for the Bucs, you keep Winfield, you re-sign Mike Evans. Now you need to keep Baker Mayfield. I think this helps you keep Baker Mayfield interested, helps you keep Baker Mayfield focused on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers long term. Love that for them. Then there's lots of cuts. Seahawks released Jamal Adams, who they got in a big deal. I was thinking they got him in a deal. You got a couple first-round picks for Jamal Adams. Turned out to be a bust of a trade for Seattle. They released Jamal Adams, Quandre Diggs, and Will Dissly, a tight end. So 3 veterans that's been on that team a long time. You could say 3 Pete Carroll guys all out in Seattle as they try to open up cap space and kind of refigure their team going forward here. Also today, the Bills, they were $50 million over the salary cap. Well, they had some work to do. Today, they released Tre'Davious White, who was a great corner. They gave him a contract, but over the last 2 seasons, he's only played 10 games after suffering a torn Achilles in October and a torn ACL the year before. They'll save $10 million as a post-June 1 release. Started 82 games, totaling 68 passes defended and 18 interceptions. He made all-pro teams in 2019 and 2020, but the ruthless game of football taking a toll on his body, and they release him today. The Bills also released veterans Jordan Poyer, a great safety who's been like a captain of that team for a long time. He's another guy who injury prone, couldn't stay on the field. They let him go. He's also in his mid-30s. Mitch Morse, the center, he's been with the club since 2019, starting 77 games during that span. Deontay Hardy, one of the key punt returners, was also released. Poyer signed a 4-year deal with the Bills in 2017. The safety spent the first 4 seasons of his career with Philadelphia Eagles and Cleveland Browns. Started 16 games last year, 100 tackles, but too much money. Micah Hyde is also slated to hit free agency on Monday, meaning Buffalo could be looking for 2 new starters at the position. Hyde has also been with the team since 2017. So, changing up the foundation of their team. A lot of veterans out the door. New faces will be coming in. Teams are doing this. Eric Kendricks was released by the Chargers. They're going to have to do more of this before free agency because they are something like $75 million over the salary cap. Can they find a trade for Khalil Mack? What are they going to do with Joey Bosa? Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, is he going to be released? Can they find some restructuring of contracts? So lots happening on that front as teams try to find their way through here. Zach Ertz today, tight end, signed a 1-year deal with the Washington football team, so he has a new home. Good for him, $5.5 million in total money for Zach Ertz. Also, the Bills and pass rusher Von Miller agreed to a renegotiated contract per source. The deal has a base value of $8.85 million in 2024 with the chance to make up to $20 million with incentives, up from $17.5 under the old term. The move saves Buffalo $8.6 million in 2024 salary cap space. Von Miller has been one of the worst contracts in sports since he signed with the Bills. Not available, away from the team for reasons we don't know. And they need to do these things to stay competitive, to stay in the mix. And these moves are tough, but I saw Louis Riddick tweet it out. It's the business of the NFL. This is how it works. That's why there is no loyalty in pro sports. Guys who've given a lot to the Buffalo Bills organization, they let go because they have to try to build a team. The Eagles also cut Avonte Maddox, a corner. He's been with the team for over 8 years. He's released today. So, that time of year where a lot of stuff is happening, teams have to make moves. But lots going down. And this is courtesy of Elliot Friedman. Not sure where all of this is going to go, but hearing Vegas has entered the Noah Hannafin conversations. Interesting. I don't know how they pull that off, but I think Hannafin, being an American, would gladly go to Vegas. Chance to win a stint there. Do you have a great defense? You get Hannafin. They're going to have to sit. Nick Hague might not play come playoff time. Add more depth. Still moves to be made. But we'll see. Still lots to come. We got our trade deadline special on Friday. Also on Friday, we will preview UFC 299 in Miami. O'Malley versus Chito Vera. Can't wait for that this weekend. So we will preview that on Friday as well. Anything else? World of sports. Watching some curling. I'm watching a lot of curling. The Brier, although James Grattan, not doing great for New Brunswick. Has not won a game yet. 0-6. Tournament lost 15-3 this afternoon to Brendan Botcher of Alberta. But you look, Botcher's looking great. Gushu's turned it around after a poor start. Carruthers, which is really Team Brad Jacobs, they get another win. PEI has had a really good tournament so far. Well, Kevin Cooey, normal great player, 1-5 after 6 games. We got Team Canada 5-2, Saskatchewan 5-1, PEI 4-2, and PEI's got an important game this evening against Kevin Cooey, so we'll see what happens there. Mike McEwen of Saskatchewan has been pretty dominant over the first couple of days as well. Top 3 teams in each pool advance, so we'll see how that transpires as we move forward here. 3 games on tap tonight. We got loaded in the NBA. We got March Madness stuff that will start to tee up as we get going. Last weekend before the conference conference championship games are the upcoming week. So that will be full focus. We'll talk about the tournament, which will start 2 weeks from tomorrow. So it'll be here before we know it. Can't wait for the madness. Love it. And all that comes with it. So we'll talk to you Friday. We'll have lots to tee up, lots to dive into. Until then, thank you for the support. Appreciate for listening. Until next time, this is To The Point.